Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about The Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghost of Georgia. And this is a continuation of Halloween month.
Yeah, happy October,
yes.
Everybody.
Yeah.
It's full month. We are bringing you Halloween and horror-themed movies to go along with Halloween spooky season.
Yes, and the movie's description reads as follows. A young family moves into a historic house in Georgia and learns that they're not the house's only inhabitants. They find themselves in the presence of a secret rising from underground that threatens to bring down anyone in its path. The movie was written by David Coggessell. He wrote Orphan First Kill. He had a lot of horror movie credits on his page. And he was also a producer on 1,000 Ways to Die, which amused me to no end when I realized that. Are you familiar with that show at all?
I'm not.
No? Okay. It's pretty fun. I actually started watching that with my ex. Well, no, she is the mother of my child, but I'm not with her currently.
Ex-wife is the word
Ex-wife
for that.
is what I'm looking for, yes. But yeah, that was a fun series. It was directed by Tom Elkins, who, this is his one and only directorial stint. He was an editor on the original Haunting of Connecticut.
Yes, he is an editor. He has a lot of
16 editing credits.
What is his name again?
Tom Elkins.
Tom Elkins, there he is. He actually has a voice cameo in this movie as reporter number 4.
Yeah, he has 4 acting credits, including his role in this film.
But yeah, he edited a lot of great horror movies, including Wrong Turn, Annabelle, and more recently, The Invitation.
Yes.
Which is interesting because watching this film, I did think this is some really interesting editing happening on this film. It's very visual, which made it really difficult to take notes on.
I didn't always love all the choices they made, but we'll get into that.
It's interesting though, right? Yeah. It's different. There's some unusual cinematography at play in this film. Before we get too deep into this, we should talk about why are we even talking about this movie.
Right. Should I do my last final blurb before doing
that?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
All right. So before going any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the movie, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening to the platforms of this podcast, now be one. Please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel and hitting the bell so you can get notified with when new content drops. All right.
So, Haunting in Connecticut 2.
Yes.
First and foremost to know about this movie has nothing to do with the Haunting in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Part 1.
So I saw a note on Internet Movie Database with the director talking about this.
Yeah.
It was not conceived as a sequel to Haunting.
They were making this film.
Yeah.
And then somebody somewhere at the studio or whoever was like, you know what, that film was successful, so let's just put that name on it.
Which is...
It was a bad decision.
It is a bad decision.
It was a bad decision.
I mean, okay, so this is a ghost story based on a true story. If you can't market that on its own, then you have no business being in the marketing
So The Haunting in Connecticut was also based on a true story. It was based on, a true haunted house story. It was a case of Ed and Lorraine Warren, which is the whole Conjuring universe.
Right.
Now, Haunting in Connecticut is not part of the Conjuring universe, but it is part of that real-life story. It was an Ed and Lorraine Warren case. Now, not only does this not have anything to do with the Haunting in Connecticut, it has nothing to do with Ed and Lorraine Warren. They did not cover this case. Nor does it take place in Connecticut. It takes place in Georgia.
Right.
Hence the subtitle Ghost of Georgia. So yeah, whoever made that decision, I think they were a little insane.
Yeah.
And this movie probably would have done a lot better if it was not called Haunting in Connecticut 2.
I agree.
So prepping for this movie this week, I was talking to a few different people saying, oh yeah, I'm watching this movie Haunting in Connecticut 2, and every single person I told that to, and then I said, it doesn't take place in Connecticut. They're like, wait, what? Oh, it's the family from that? Nope, there's no link.
There's no connection whatsoever.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. As you said, it is very loosely based on a true story. So I do want to talk a little bit about the real life history here before we get into our scene by scene on the movie. And you know what? I'm going to start by saying this is not a great movie.
I would agree with that. It's not a bad movie.
Not everything that we cover is because we love it.
Right.
So oh, this is where I was starting. The reason we picked this movie to cover, obviously there's a bajillion and one horror movies we could pick to talk about. This is one that we chose to cover specifically because the two lead actors are people who are in shows that we talk about. So we primarily here talk about television shows. You know, this is the Deep Dive TV podcast. Covering movies is, you know, just a little added bonus. So one of the series that we cover regularly, and we are covering it right now, is season 2 of Sullivan's Crossing. And one of the stars of Sullivan's Crossing is Chad Michael Murray. He plays the dad in this movie, opposite of Abigail Spencer, who plays the mom. And anyone you know, who watches us regularly, you know, we cover Quantum Leap. We love time travel. She was the lead actress in the show Timeless, which I love that show. We haven't necessarily talked about it too much on the channel, but she's the star of that. And we did cover her sitcom that aired last season called Extended Family. It unfortunately has been canceled after one season, so we're not going to get any more of that. But I think that was my favorite part of watching this film, is seeing Abigail Spencer play this character. And, you know, everything I see her in is so different from everything else I've seen her in. And she's really got some range.
She does.
I've seen her now do a lot of different genres. And I think watching her was my favorite part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Chad Michael Murray was, you know, not a huge part in this movie.
Yeah, he's the dad, but he's just kind of there for most of the movie. He doesn't have a whole lot to do. She's got a much more important role. Okay, so the 4 main family members, the characters in this, which is Lisa and Andy Wyrick, their daughter Heidi Wyrick, and Lisa's sister Joyce. Those are all real people. Okay, the Wyrick family is a real family. And so this all comes from, you know, the real life story. I found that the movie was inspired by events surrounding the Wyrick house of Ellerslie, Georgia. And these were published in a book called The Veil, Heidi Wyrick's Story. So the movie is supposed to be based on this book. And the book is written by Heidi's Aunt Joyce.
Okay.
So Joyce,
the
aunt in this movie, is the woman who wrote this book. There's also a whole documentary about this, which I kind of want to watch now to see like a more like fact-based version of this.
Maybe we should watch it and cover it.
Oh, I don't know if we got time for that. But there's a documentary that the Discovery Channel put out called A Haunting in Georgia, which would have made a more appropriate title for this movie.
Yes. And, you know, it's amusing to me because you also sent me a link.
Oh, I was getting to that.
Okay. You sent me the link to the Unsolved Mysteries episode.
Yeah.
Without telling me anything about why you were sending it to me. You told me when to forward it to. And then, okay, this is what it's about, this incident.
Yeah.
And, you know, having already watched the movie, I noticed, okay,
that's not what this was.
Right, exactly.
Even though you could tell that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a documentary based on Heidi's story called A Haunting in Georgia, which came out in 2002. This film is 2013, and it was released as a sequel to the 2009 A Haunting in Connecticut. So before any of that, in 2002, there was a documentary about it put out by the Discovery Channel. Now, one interesting thing I noted is also the Discovery Channel in 2002 put out a documentary, A Haunting in Connecticut, based on that story.
Okay.
So that is the link between these two, is the Discovery Channel did a haunting episode on both of them.
Oh, okay.
And they were actually released together. They had a DVD release where A Haunting in Connecticut and A Haunting in Georgia documentaries are released together on DVD.
Interesting.
So maybe somebody like saw that somewhere when this movie was being filmed and thought, oh, that's a reason that we can link them together.
Well,
but the only link is they're both based on, you know, real life haunted house stories.
The average person is not going to make that connection.
Right. The average person is going to be like the people who I talked to this week that said, what? And would have went into this movie disappointed because it has nothing to do with what they think they're going to see.
Right.
Anyways, yeah. The documentary, as you mentioned, it was also featured in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Now, that dates all the way back to 1994.
Okay.
Which was right around the time these things were actually happening. So when Heidi was still a little girl, she was featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. It specifically is Season 7, Episode 4, if anyone wants to check that out, which aired on October 21st, 1994. So I watched that, like you said, and then I sent it to you. The first thing I noticed is while I was watching it, I totally recognized it. I remember seeing this clip before.
Oh, really?
I recognized the whole scene. I recognized the real life little girl talking. Because you know how they interview the real people and then they have actors like playing it out, which is kind of a weird thing they do anyways. If you got the real people out, they just act it out.
Right, yeah.
But anyways, like watching it, I'm like, oh my God, I remember this. I literally remember seeing this when I was little. And I'm pretty close in age to Heidi. I'm a couple years older than her. So it was like, wow, I remember this. And this is not what this movie was that I just watched. This is not the same story.
Right.
Yet that's the story this was based on. So the real life history is the family moved into a new house. And again, this was in Ellerslie, Georgia. In 1989, they moved into the house.
Yeah, the movie starts in 1993.
Right.
When this is, in actual fact, they moved into the house in 1989.
They moved into the house in 1989.
And it was like a 5-year history.
Heidi was 3 years old when this all started. So she was much younger than the actress in the movie. In the movie, the whole thing takes place over like 2 months. Where in real life, their experiences took place over years. So they moved into this house in 89. And Heidi claimed to see ghosts of 2 different people. Mr. Gordy and another spirit that she called Con. And her aunt, Joyce, lived next door.
Right.
In a house. Now, we weren't in plantation houses. There's no RV. There is no Underground Railroad. None of that is based on anything.
Right.
Okay. So there's a regular, it's a regular residential street. They live in 2 houses next door to each other. And the aunt's house used to belong to James S. Gordy.
Yes.
He was 2 owners ago. This man named James S. Gordy owned the house. And then the woman who owned the house after him later identified this ghost that Heidi was seeing that she called Con as her Uncle Lon. So she showed the little girl pictures of her family, and she pointed out Uncle Lon and said, that's Con. So this ghost of somebody named Con, which that's not in the movie at all. We took him out of the story. He died in the 50s, and he was missing a hand because he was in some kind of industrial accident and lost his hand in the 50s. So that's one of the things that plays out in the Unsolved Mystery clip is this man comes to the door who's got a bloody stump for an arm. And maybe that's why, watching that, I was like, I remember this. I think maybe that's what stood out to me was this bloody stump dude at the door. So she was claimed to see both these ghosts, and they both were identified. The name was a little off, but they're like, oh, she was 3. She couldn't speak well. So he said, my name is Lon, and she put it out as Con. But both of them ended up getting identified as who they think these people are, that this little girl's claiming she's seeing them. And then in 1994, Heidi had a little sister born named Jordan. And when Jordan was a baby, the family believed they were visited by an evil spirit that was leaving marks on their bodies. So they were waking up, and both Heidi and her dad, over a course of several nights, had scratches on their body. And it's interesting because at one point in the movie, you do see the dad with 3 scratches on his arm.
Right.
And they don't point that out as a big detail, but that's one of the few things they actually pulled from Heidi's real life story, is that there was mysterious scratches that appeared on her father. And that's about where the story ends. Gotcha. The real life story.
Yeah.
This little girl claims she sees ghosts, and they identified them, and that's creepy, right?
And they spun this entire Underground Railroad story from nothing.
About the time that the Unsolved Mysteries episode was being filmed, they brought in a parapsychologist, and they read a picture of the real life Mr. Gordy from his obituary, and they did a photo lineup. And we actually, in that episode of Unsolved Mysteries, see the real life footage. That wasn't a reenactment. That was the real life Heidi Weirich. We see her with the parapsychologist picking out Mr. Gordy's photo. That's real footage. Now, the funny thing is that scene that was, kind of redone for the movie did a way better job of it. So if you watch that Unsolved Mysteries scene, this parapsychologist totally led the little girl.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, one of these is Mr. Gordy. Which one's Mr. Gordy?
Gotcha.
Instead of, in the movie where they did it so much better, where there's here's a bunch of pictures, and they just kind of waited to see if the little girl said anything. They didn't tell her what the frick she was looking for.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how much merit I give them saying, okay, which one of these old men is Mr. Gordy? I don't find that to be much evidence there. But yeah, there's no mention anywhere of the Underground Railroad taxidermy. No mention of Heidi's mother or aunt ever seeing ghosts.
Right.
The whole real story is just this little girl saw ghosts and claims that she's in her 20s now, late 20s. No, that doesn't sound right. She's in her 30s now. She's in her 30s now, late 30s. But she claims to still, see spirits. She has this gift, right, where she sees spirits, and that's the story.
Okay.
That's the extent of it.
Gotcha.
Now this is something you run into whenever you have a horror movie based on.
Of course.
Based on true events, right?
Yeah.
Either it's going to be a really boring movie because it's based on real events,
right?
Or it's going to be so ridiculously fictionalized. There's the word. That it doesn't even resemble the real story anymore, which is what they did here.
Yeah, I wonder which direction they chose to go in.
It's very much crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I got on the real history, and I'm sorry if it went on too long. But
I actually expected you to go on for at least another hour.
One detail from the Unsolved Mysteries is they were Mr. Gordy was telling her, "Oh, I've got a swing next door. Do you want to go play on the swing?"
Mm-hmm.
And that detail was brought into the movie.
Yes. So
my experience here is I watched the movie the first time. I did not enjoy it.
Yeah, I had a similar reaction. I was okay with it until the last third of the movie.
I didn't enjoy the movie, and I was like, what the heck are we watching? This is a terrible movie. Then I did all this research, watched the Unsolved Mysteries clip, learned the real story. And I don't know, between that and being able to pick out these details from the real story, and maybe just the fact that rewatching it, I'm paying so much more attention in order to take the notes.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot more on the second watch.
I had a similar experience without the
It's still a bad movie.
Yeah, I don't think it's
I
great.
enjoy bad horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
So it was much more watchable for me once I really dug in and took the notes, and I was like, oh yeah, the swing. That's a detail from this little girl's actual story, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I missed a lot the first time. I don't know if I was just too distracted when I was watching it.
I think I was too tired.
There were so many little details that I don't know if it's just because once you finish it and you know all the end game stuff, and then you see them earlier and it makes sense. Yeah. I don't know if that's the problem, but yeah, if you watch this once and didn't enjoy it, I say watch it again. Mm-hmm. It improves, and we both said that. Yeah. So we both enjoyed it more the second time. Maybe it was just a matter of them sprinkling all these little details when they didn't make any sense. Well,
for me, it seemed like the last third of the movie just completely became incoherent.
Yeah, we were talking about the editing. Yeah. So much of this movie is just little blips of visual craziness. Yeah. All these there's a ghost. There's you can't tell the difference anymore between what's a flashback to the past and what's a ghost that we're seeing now, and what's their vision and what's really there, and what's physical and what's... And yeah, it's just kind of very sporadic. Yeah. And then we get it twitching back and forth between black and white and sepia toned. I mean, not black, color and sepia tone. And yeah, it's a little what am I watching? What is going on? Yeah. But once you know everything and then you watch it again, it's okay, I get it now. Right. I get what they were going for.
Yeah, it didn't completely work, but you could see what they were trying to do. So yeah, do we have anything else to say before just diving in?
All right, so let's dive in. What we do here is we go scene by scene through what we're talking about. In this case, this really bad horror movie. And I'm not going to say it's not really bad. It's really not well received, I think. I don't think this movie did well.
So you're saying The Haunting in Connecticut 2, naming it that, didn't help its popularity?
I think that, I think it would have done a lot better if they just called it A Haunting in Georgia.
I agree. I think, yeah. I mean, if you can't sell this story, a ghost story, which is, generally pretty popular, a true story, even though most of this is BS, then you don't belong in the marketing department of a movie. Right. You just should find a new career.
And as we go, I'm going to talk about all of the actors in this film. There are a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I started by saying, there's not a lot of people in this. We got this. And then I was like, there's a lot of people in this. Yeah. Most of them aren't alive. But right. Yeah. It gave us a lot of actors.
Well, the actors are alive, but they're playing dead characters.
You know what I meant. Come on.
Okay.
So we start, before we even get into the details, I just found it hilarious. Usually you see it say based on a true story. Right. This one comes up, the title card, it says based on the true story. Ah. It's not a true story, it's the true story. So I found that hilarious just from the beginning.
Yep. It starts June 14th, 1993.
In Atlanta, Georgia.
The movie begins with Lisa, played by Abigail Breslin of
Abigail Spencer.
Breslin? Why did I get Breslin? I don't know. Extended family, timeless. She's sitting in her room, seemingly seeing a ghost in the corner of her room. The ghost turns out to be Lisa's mother, though we don't know that yet. She's played by Morgan Shaw. She was in the movies about Kurt Warner, American Underdog, 62 credits for her. She was also in Second-Hand Lines with Haley Joel Osment and an episode of Prison Break.
She was in 12 episodes of a show called Salem. I really liked that one.
That's Stephen King, right?
It's not Stephen King, no. That's Salem's Lot. This is just a show called Salem. It's about the witches of Salem.
She takes some pills, and later we'll get a close-up of this bottle. It's olanzapine. It's for, and I looked this up, it's for bipolar disorder or schizophrenia disorder. And the ghost gradually seems to fade into the corner. She's soon interrupted by her daughter, Heidi, played by Emily Allen Lind. She has 42 credits for her. 22 episodes of Gossip Girl, 18 episodes of Revenge, and she played a ghost herself in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yeah, which is her most recent credit.
Yeah, and I happen to really enjoy that particular performance from her. I didn't even know that was the same person.
Okay.
Because she's way younger.
I didn't actually see that movie, but I thought that was a cool credit to find. Ernie Hudson was in that film.
Yes, of course. Her mother asks her what she's doing up, and she's pointing out that it's bright as day out. So I'm like, why is it so weird that she's up? Like, it looks like it's in the middle of the day. Now, granted, this is Georgia, and I'm sure we're on a different time frame, and maybe it's a little lighter earlier, but still, this seemed really kind of weird to me.
The daughter, Heidi, she said she just had a dream. And this is where she said she dreamt about a swing. And this is when I rewatched, I'm like, okay, the swing. Like, you know, from the actual story from Unsolved Mysteries. She dreamt about a swing and asked if there is one at their new house. So we learned they're moving into a new house.
Yep, they're moving. Her husband apparently is already there.
Yeah, and we jump to June 16th, so 2 days later, in Pine Mountain, Georgia. We are given the location of, which I thought that was weird, because remember, the real house was in Ellerslie. I did look these up. They're both real cities. Pine Mountain is about 20 miles away from Ellerslie. So I'm a little confused why they changed that.
Yeah. So they end up meeting up with Andy, played by Chad Michael Murray of Sullivan's Crossing and One Tree Hill fame.
Yeah, he's also in episodes of Dawson's Creek, Gilmore Girls. He was in the movie Freaky Friday, and it has just recently been confirmed that he's coming back for the sequel that's supposed to come out next year.
Oh, cool.
That's super cool. He plays, the love interest, so I'm curious to see how that's how he's gonna come back as that. So
Heidi is excited to see him and runs up to see him. The new house appears to be some kind of weird farm-like house.
Yeah, it's like a plantation house.
Andy and Lisa chat in the kitchen when they hear a scratching at the door. And we have our first jump scare where we see a raccoon.
Yes.
Lisa laughs as Andy throws things at it.
A raccoon came to visit.
Yeah. Yep. Basically, Andy throws things at it, and the raccoon ends up going away.
Yeah, so no ghosts yet, just a raccoon.
Heidi is in her room when she spots a ghostly figure outside. And she's freaked, but she kind of completely forgets about that when she hears a honking and realizes that Aunt Joyce is coming.
Aunt Joyce is here. Okay, so this is our main ghost. And this is the ghost that's based on the real life ghost, right? This is Mr. Gordy. And he's played by Grant James, who was in 2 episodes of Better Call Saul. He was in 2 episodes of Ravenswood, which is the Pretty Little Liars spinoff.
Yep.
He does tons of voice work on his credits, lots of voice work for him, which makes sense because he does a lot of weird speaking and kind of calling. Most of the ghosts here are just kind of like detached voices that we see throughout this movie. And the aunt, Joyce,
she's played by Katie Sackhoff, who was in 20 episodes of 24 and a regular on Battlestar Galactica. That's the newer version. That has basically replaced the series in the public consciousness. When you think Battlestar Galactica, you really think about the new one as opposed to the old one.
The new one, which is still 20, 30 years old now. Yeah, she was in that. She was in the movie Halloween Resurrection. And she got to play herself in 2 episodes of The Big Bang Theory.
Ooh.
I'm sure based on her Battlestar Galactica experience.
Right.
But that's, you made it in life when you get to be yourself on Big Bang Theory. You made it in the sci-fi world to do that.
Yep. Joyce is here for a visit, or so she says. Andy's skeptical, and sure enough, she has a suitcase.
She had like 3 or 4 suitcases.
Yes.
Full luggage, that trunk.
Which confirms her suspicion that she's planning for a longer stay. Now, she is whose brother? Andy's or...
She's Lisa's sister.
Lisa's sister, okay.
Yeah. Which is an important detail.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That they're, genetically related.
Right.
So, yeah, she says it didn't work out with her drunk married boyfriend, Ray. Imagine that.
Yeah, I could have told her that it wouldn't have worked out, but, nobody listens to me. And Heidi, in the scene where we hear this, is very obviously wearing lipstick, which I thought was an interesting detail. Her lips are very red, like she put some lipstick on.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
Maybe Aunt Joyce brought it.
Maybe.
And that's one of the... we get that, hint that she's like the crazy aunt that the parents don't really approve of.
She has another flash, and then Joyce mentioned that she wants to live closer to her family, and Andy's perfectly okay with that, but not here, not this close.
Right. But in their yard, there's this old abandoned RV.
Yep.
And she's like, well, I can just live there.
Yeah.
And they're like, loophole, it's not here, even though, it is, it's their property.
Right, yeah.
But she's going to move into the RV, and that's where she's going to live for the rest of the movie.
Heidi says a girl lives in there, and Andy says nope, and everyone pretty much ignores what she's saying, which is not atypical. You usually end up ignoring the kid, even though maybe you should not. Later that night, Lisa brings out the trash. This starts a trend of something that I kind of found interesting. Why are they always doing this stuff at night?
Right.
They're putting a laundry away at night.
Aunt Joyce does laundry at night like 6 times in this movie.
Right. And
like it's pitch dark outside and she's putting laundry on the line or taking it off.
Right, yeah.
Like every other scene, she's doing laundry in the dark.
Yes. So, yeah, she brings out trash. She hears some noises in the woods and investigates. And she sees a rather scary corpse.
Yeah, I put it as a crying, decomposing corpse is what I wrote.
That is a good description.
So yeah, Lisa sees things. Yeah. That's what we got so far.
She screams, tells her to stop it, looks again, and sees nothing. And she starts crying. She's found by Heidi, who asks why she's crying. She claims to be fine, even though it's clear she's not, and says Joyce is around the house to go talk to her. Heidi's concerned about her mother, but she does as she's told. Joyce talks to Heidi, and we learn that Joyce, her mother, and Lisa all had the same gift, but Lisa doesn't like it too much and spends the movie denying its existence, and even chalks it up to mental illness.
Yeah, so that's where we are so apparently Lisa and her sister Joyce see things.
Right.
And Lisa doesn't like it, that's why she takes these pills. She thinks she's mentally ill.
Mm.
And her sister doesn't...
She really?
Well, she wants to think she's mentally ill because she doesn't want to admit that she sees real things. She says these things are fake. And so Joyce tells Heidi to look out in the night and what do you feel? Right. And Heidi says she can see and hear people.
That she was born with a veil.
Joyce is realizing that, it's Heidi's time now. And apparently their mother also, the dead mother.
Yeah.
She also had this interesting gift where she could see dead people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this doesn't necessarily need to be the sequel to Haunting Connecticut. It could just as easily have been the sequel to Sixth Sense because it's about seeing dead people.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, she said she was born with a veil. So I looked that up, and this is a real thing. A baby, and this is a quote from, I didn't write where, sorry. It's a quote from Google.
Okay.
A baby born with a veil, also known as an en-caul birth or mermaid birth, is a rare event that occurs when a baby is born inside or partially wrapped in an intact amniotic sac. And it occurs in less than 1 in 80,000 births, and it can make a newborn look like they're wrapped in a soft, jello-like bubble.
Interesting.
Which reminds me of another movie we covered.
Right. So, that would make you see dead people?
So what Joyce is saying is all 3 of them were born with a veil. All 4 of them, really. The 2 sisters, the little girl, and their mother, the grandmother.
Okay.
And she says that she thinks that's the reason why they see dead people is because they were all born with a veil. And it makes me wonder, I'm not sure, I didn't find anything on this, but the name of the book that the real life Joyce wrote is called The Veil, Heidi Weir's story.
Gotcha.
I'm wondering if real life Joyce actually thinks that that's the reason Heidi can see things. So maybe the real life Heidi was born with a veil because that's what she named the book.
Okay.
So I don't know that. I didn't read the book, but I'm guessing that's where this is going. Is that they're, that the real life little girl was born 1 in 80,000 with a veil.
Gotcha. Okay. So the next morning, Lisa is in the bathtub in a nightgown filled with water, where she is spoken to her by her mother, telling her to listen to her, and she has something to say and to be a good girl before it starts to get really freaky. Annie interrupts and suggests that it's no good paying for pills if they don't work. Lisa insists that they do, but when they start to wear off, it gets rough.
Yeah. Now, was she going for sensory deprivation? Is that what's happening here?
I'm not sure
she's
what
just
she's
laying
doing.
in the bathtub. I mean, if that's what she was going for, she's not doing it right. She's got like one ear in the water, one ear up. She's fully dressed, by the way.
Yeah, well, she's in a nightgown, but
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's too dressed to be taking a bath.
Yes, yeah. I don't imagine that would be very comfortable.
And Andy's like, how long have you been here this time? It's 6 a.m. So she does this a lot.
Maybe she's taking her tips from Elgin from
She likes to lay in the bath, and so I imagine she's going for some type of sensory deprivation, but that's not how that works. It doesn't work by just laying in a bathtub with one ear underwater.
Meanwhile, Heidi is practicing riding a bike, struggling with it, not helped by seeing ghostly figures and falling over.
And I want to mention, I didn't mention this earlier, in that first scene where she was talking about the swing, is there a swing at the new house? Her mom told her, we can bring your bike to the new house, even though you don't know how to ride it.
Right.
So that's a theme going here. She owns a bike, does not know how to ride the bike.
And Gordy turns out to be a better parent than either one of these guys are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's helped up by the ghost that we will know as Mr. Gordy. Driving back from somewhere, Joyce notices Heidi's bike, but no Heidi. She finds Lisa panicking, and Heidi comes back saying she isn't supposed to say where she's been, which is concerning, and then proceeds to basically tell everything that she's not supposed to say.
Yeah, she was with a man named Mr. Gordy who lured her into the woods to go play on a swing set, just like in her dream.
And I would be very worried at this point about this old man that lured her somewhere.
Which is how her parents react.
And, it's understandable.
So she brings the family to the woods, and we see this tree. This tree plays a very important part in the rest of the movie. There's no swing on the tree. And she says, Mr. Gordy said that's where the swing is, but the swing's not there. But Dad notices that there are chains up at the top, meaning there used to be a swing here.
And Andy ends up stepping into some kind of hole. He slips, much to everyone's amusement. And at first, this seems like a throwaway gag, but it actually turns out to be important.
It does come back, yeah. And that's one of those details that I totally didn't pick up on what was going on until my second watch through.
Also, we learn here that Mr. Gordy says that there's money buried out in the backyard. Lisa wants to deny everything, but Andy is curious about the money.
Yeah, this is where she tells her, if he ever comes around again, scream as loud as you can. So she thinks there's some scary old dude talking to my daughter.
Yeah, and Heidi never listens to anything any of these parents say, and probably for the better. Meanwhile, okay, so Lisa starts experiencing a spooky power outage and finds Heidi talking to Mr. Gordy out a window, noticing that she's not screaming here, by the way. But Lisa can't see him. Lisa tells her that seeing things that aren't there is not a road she wants to go down.
Yeah, so Lisa now, I'm sure, feels better because she thinks Heidi's just making up an imaginary friend.
Right, yeah.
My daughter's not seeing ghosts.
Yeah.
She has an imaginary friend. And meanwhile, Andy and Joyce are in the garden digging up, looking for the money that Mr. Gordy said is there.
Yeah, Lisa gives them crap about, her being around for 1 week, and now Heidi's having invisible friends and being on a wild goose chase. But it turns out Andy has actually found some money. Now, what exactly is this?
So it was a box of old coins. Probably very old coins, given the history of this property.
Yeah.
Probably very valuable, really old coins. So it was a box of coins that was buried in the yard. And Andy and Lisa are like, look, Mr. Gordy was right. Here's money buried in the yard.
Lisa, meanwhile, goes outside after hearing her mom suggest letting them in. And we see her flash gray, or sepia tone, like Heidi has several times at this point. And she sees a horrifying creature before she runs back inside. Joyce, meanwhile, has gone shopping.
Now we've jumped to June 24th.
Yep.
So we keep getting these dates telling us our timeline.
She refers to Mr. Gordy as her sugar daddy.
Yeah, so she used the money that they got from these coins to go on a shopping spree. Now, why is any of this money hers?
I don't know. But I hope she didn't spend all of it.
Right.
Joyce has done some digging And
some other kind of digging.
Yes, the digging that you did preparing for this podcast.
Yeah.
And the Gordy family owned it back in the day.
Yeah, so they got the property from the bank, and we already learned they got a really good deal on this property because nobody's lived here in a long time. But before that, the last person who owned this house was a Mr. James S. Gordy, who has been dead since the 70s. But his family owned the property going back 200 years.
Joyce brings out Heidi, saying she's looking for a husband for her, but it's a bunch of old people, so she's like, why don't you marry them?
Yeah, so these are photos, a bunch of black and white photos of old men, and this is the scene that they're recreating that actually, happened when Unsolved Mysteries was trying to get the real Heidi to identify Mr. Gordy. So this is the recreation of that scene for this film.
Now, which is more accurate, the one we saw in Unsolved Mysteries or the one we saw here?
The one that was the actual footage they used in Unsolved Mysteries. Like, it was handheld camera, somebody...
Gotcha.
Like, actual footage.
Okay, I thought that was
that wasn't part of the reenactment.
Okay.
Yeah, if you watch it again, you can see it says, like, this is the actual footage of the real life Heidi seeing his picture for the first time. And again, the psychologist led her. I think they did a terrible job of trying to find evidence here.
Yeah.
But in this scene, Joyce doesn't say anything. She's just like, hey, help me pick one of these dudes out, right? And Heidi picks up the picture that we saw they had cut out of Mr. Gordy's obituary. So there is a picture of Mr. Gordy and a bunch of other random old men. She picks out Mr. Gordy and she's like, look, I told you he's real. That's Mr. Gordy.
Heidi is upset her mother didn't believe her, and Mr. Gordy died in the 70s. Lisa is upset, still denying it. They fight over Heidi. Apparently the pill thing was a trick their mother used to use.
Yeah, and I think they were kind of insinuating that's what caused her death.
Yeah.
Was from popping pills.
Joyce tells Lisa that it's starting for Heidi. Lisa tries to talk to Heidi, but she pretends to be asleep. Meanwhile, the pastor... Jordan visits.
Pastor Wells.
Where did I get Jordan from?
His first name might be Jordan.
Okay.
There was a first name mentioned somewhere.
Yeah.
He's just credited as Pastor Wells.
Okay.
And he's played by Lance E. Nichols, who has 212 acting credits.
Pretty impressive.
Including an episode of The Purge TV show and an episode of American Horror Story.
I also have him in a movie called Palmer, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and an episode of The West Wing. Gordy was the station manager. Pastor suggests that the station manager for the Underground Railroad.
Oh, he wasn't a station manager.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's right. No.
So he's visiting the family because he's trying to get them to join his church. He tells them that their property is special. Yeah. And that it used to be part of the Underground Railroad, which the family had no idea about. The bank didn't tell them any of this.
Right.
It used to be part of the Underground Railroad, that a station master lived here. And station master is somebody who helped hide slaves on the Underground Railroad. And he was an extraordinary man, and you shouldn't be surprised if any visitors come wanting to see the place, because this place is like a big deal. Right.
And Andy asks, living ones? And the pastor's like, as opposed to, like, what are you talking about?
Right. And he says that the last owner, J.S. Gordy, was not so hospitable to those visitors. So he hopes that the family here is going to be more hospitable. And Heidi jumps in and is like, well, Mr. Gordy's always nice to me. He's not a bad man.
Right.
So yeah, the pastor's giving them some side eyes. Like, what the heck's going on here?
Right. Joyce does laundry at night again and sees a mysterious light. She goes in the forest to investigate, finds a lantern, which is blown out by the wind. She finds a quilt, and then hears other spooky noises, and then has some flashes herself.
Yeah, so the light and the quilt is all, like, visions she's having of a flashback of the past. But then she finds the actual quilt kind of buried on the ground there. So the quilt she saw and the lantern were new, and then suddenly they were, 200 years old.
Right.
And the quilt's, a very old thing, but she dug it up. And then she sees this woman, and she runs home. She's scared now. She runs home. And meanwhile, Heidi is hearing voices, and the voices are asking for help while she's sleeping.
The next morning, Heidi uses her ability and encounters Mr. Gordy, who's approached by Andy while she's talking to him. And Andy says they have a surprise for her, and it turns out to be a dog.
A dog.
And I had such bad feelings, when I was originally watching this
Yes.
movie. I thought for sure that this dog would be dead.
As soon as we saw the dog, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, the dog's going to die. We're going to have to do a trigger warning, but guess what? The dog doesn't die.
Yes.
The dog lives through this
Spoiler alert, the dog lives.
The dog they named Chief.
And it apparently hears the dead people as well, because it seems to be reacting to all the voices from the dead, and then it ends up going missing.
Yeah, Chief runs off into the woods. Andy and Heidi go off to find him, and they find him trapped in this ancient-looking wooden cage that lets animals in, but doesn't give them a way out. And there's also some really old bones in the cage.
Yeah, Heidi was actually left behind when Andy went to look for the dog in the box. And we see the trees are trying to talk to Heidi. That's my note. But it's actually like the dead trying to speak to her, but it looks like it's coming from the trees.
And she also sees that swing that's not there.
Mm.
She's seeing the swing, and she sees a man swinging on the swing.
Yes.
And then she sees a man with a burlap sack over his face hanging from the tree.
Those are generally not very good things.
Yeah, she's seeing a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah.
And again, these are all things that make so much more sense once you actually
Right.
watch the rest of the movie first.
Right. So Andy drags the box back to the house, and as it turns out, it's a trap for hunting.
Yeah, he explains the whole thing to Lisa, and she says there's got to be a better way to hunt. This is pretty inhumane to just lead an animal in there, and then it just sits there until it dies.
Right.
But he says it's great for taxidermists.
Ah.
And you know what? I found that really clunky of a line. Like, why would he jump to taxidermy?
I mean, unless he had some kind of knowledge about that.
He jumps to taxidermy, which doesn't feel like that's the number one reason to come to your head why somebody would like trap an animal on their property.
Right.
You'd think you're like trying to get rid of predatory animals or something.
Or
first.
even like, hunting for food.
Right. But he's like, oh, it's great for taxidermists. Hint, hint, we're talking about taxidermy. And this on first watch through, as soon as we heard the word taxidermy, I knew exactly where this movie was going. I picked up on it right away. I knew exactly what we were doing. Maybe I just watched too many horror movies.
I guess so.
Did you pick up on that being significant?
No, I didn't understand how he jumped to that either.
I didn't understand how he jumped to it, but also I was like, oh, they're telling us like people are about to get taxidermied.
Well, more than that, I didn't understand why he would know that. Like, there was nothing in his character to suggest that he would know that, but...
Right, it was... Yeah, him jumping to taxidermy
Right.
was a weird plot device they needed to tell us we need to think about taxidermy.
So, Lisa has some disturbing dreams, which includes her mother saying not to be afraid to let them in. She wakes up and sees a brief flash of a ghostly figure. Heidi sees something outside. Andy is smashing traps, and Heidi is talking to Mr. Gordy, who tells Heidi that people are coming.
And we have another date jump here.
Yeah.
It's actually July 22nd now, so we've jumped a whole month since we found the trap, which I thought was really weird because why is he waiting a month to break the traps?
Yeah.
The dates in this film are just like, why are we seeing these dates? It doesn't make any sense.
Right. They arrive... do what?
Okay, so...
Oh. No, yeah, go on.
Mr. Gordy tells Heidi people are coming. And,
drawn. Okay, I get my note now.
yeah, so Annie just wants to ask him where there's more money buried. He's not taking Mr. Gordy seriously, but he's like, hey, it worked before. And he even makes a joke like, I need to take you and Mr. Gordy on the road when he hears people are coming. So people are here. They follow the sounds of the footsteps, and they end up at this ruins on their property, which I call this is the station. That's how I put it in my notes. It's like burned out old remains of a building. There's a large bell there.
Yes.
And it's adorned with like flowers and ribbons and candles. You can see people have been coming to visit this site. It looks kind of like, on the side of the road where somebody died in a car accident.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like. Like this whole place is just full of little mementos people have left.
So yeah, they end up stumbling upon a woman who happens to be blind and black. That's somewhat important to the story, so that's why I'm mentioning it.
Yeah, so Heidi asks Andy if he can see her too. So she thinks it might be a ghost. Andy can see the woman, so she's not a ghost.
And her name is Mama Kay. I'm sure you told
Yes, Mama Kay is played by I'm probably going to say this wrong, Cicely Tyson.
I think that's accurate.
I'm
familiar with the actress.
And her very last credit was 10 episodes of How to Get Away with Murder before she passed away in 2021 at the age of 96.
Yes.
But she has tons of credits to her name, including the movie The Help, as well as a role in the original Roots.
And the guy, was his name Levi, or was that like
no? Levi's a ghost. This is Prentice.
Okay.
So Mama Kay is there with her grandson Prentice. Who's played by Brad James. He is in one episode of NCIS New Orleans, which is a Scott Bakula series. He's in an episode of Heart of Dixie and an episode of One Tree Hill.
Interesting. I wonder if he shared scenes with Chad Michael Murray.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. So they're here, and we learned that they're here because Joyce sold them that quilt. They came here to buy the quilt, and she said it was okay for them to come on back here in the woods and check out the station. And on the blanket, there is an image of a shoofly tree. And Mama Kay chats with Heidi. And she picked up on Heidi asking her dad if he saw her. So this blind woman, can't even see what's happening, has the whole thing figured out. She understands that Heidi sees and hears things. And she tells her she needs to be careful with her gift, and she needs to be careful not to let the devil in.
Right. And I think she kind of already knows the fate of the people that were related to her, at least somewhat.
I don't know if she knows.
No? But meanwhile, Prentice tells Andy a story that we don't get here.
Right.
This is something, a technique I don't really love. I don't love that we
know there's something to know, but we don't learn it yet.
And then we cut away, and then we go back to the conversation. That was a weird storytelling technique. But basically...
he's telling the story of what happened to the station master. That he's like, the pastor left this part out when he told you the story.
Basically, the story is enough to have Andy call a family meeting, which Heidi is excluded from.
And she's really upset. Yeah, she doesn't get to hear what's happening. And then we get, this cut back and forth between Lisa telling Heidi an amended version of the story while Heidi's taking a bath. And that's important for what happens next. So she's taking a bath while hearing this story. And then we're cutting back and forth between Andy actually telling... Prentice telling the story to Andy. So first Prentice told Andy, then Andy told his wife, and then his wife's telling the daughter. But we get it all in this kind of mush-mashed, weird order sequence of events.
Which I see what they're trying to do here.
Exactly.
They're trying to be arty, but it really does not work. The station manager was eventually tortured.
He was a taxidermist.
Yeah.
Well, that's where this comes in. He was a taxidermist. But he also would help hide people. Like... Mama Kay's great aunt Nell and her fiance Levi. So Nell and Levi become important to this story.
Levi, who's we do see several times, is credited. He's Jaron Mitchell. He has 48 credits, including 21 Jump Street and an American Horror Story episode.
Yes, an episode of American Horror Story. He was also in 9 episodes of The Purge and an episode of NCIS New Orleans as well.
Yeah.
And his fiance Nell, which is Mama Kay's great aunt. She's played by Lauren Pennington, who among her credits is 2 episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So we'll see Nell and Levi throughout the rest of the film.
Right. Basically the owners, the other landowners who happen to own slaves, end up torturing and hanging the station manager.
Yeah. And we get flashes of what I put in my notes as the hunting club, which will make sense to our Quantum Leap listeners.
Yes.
Which was code words for something that we're not going to call name to. I'll just say they are wearing hoods over their heads. These people wear these hoods over their heads, and they end up hanging this man, the station master, for helping the slaves. Not before putting a burlap sack over his head.
Yes, which is important.
Right, so we already saw a flash of him hanging from the tree, and now we're explaining that was the station master who, as the story goes, was killed for helping the slaves.
Lisa says it happened a long time ago to be reassuring, but Heidi says that something bad is still in the woods. She can feel it. But Lisa tells her that the things are just in her head, and Heidi says she doesn't want to be like her mother.
Right, and suppress the stuff. We also learned during this conversation that Nell and Levi never made it to where they were going, and nobody knows what happened to them.
So Heidi ends up getting left in the tub, and Lisa ends up coming back to find her basically drowning in the tub. Lisa panics, gets her out. Heidi ends up vomiting up sawdust and bugs.
Right, which we saw sawdust through all of these flashbacks and visions of taxidermy. That's what he would do to taxidermy the animals, was stuff them with sawdust. And then also when they were hanging him, they stuffed his face with sawdust.
At the hospitals, the doctors don't really believe her.
The doctor, and this is Dr. Seeger. She's played by Andrea Frankel. She's in an episode of The Outsider, Stephen King series.
Yeah.
As well as 4 episodes of The Purge.
The Outsider is a fantastic series. If you like horror, that's definitely a series to check out. I believe it's on HBO. But, so the doctors don't really believe her story. Heidi ends up telling a very different story.
Right, the doctor asks Heidi, okay, can you tell me what happened?
Right.
And she basically says, well, I didn't get out of the tub when my mom asked me to, so she ripped me out of the tub really hard.
And I'm having a hard time understanding, like, why the hospital then did not, like,
do
call
anything?
social services. They're just like, oh, she's crazy, and then lets her go on her merry way.
So the doctor tells the husband she recommends seeking out a psychiatrist or a priest.
Right, and I'm thinking at this point that, given the story that Heidi just told, that they should be calling DCS or social services.
She should have an obligation to not let this family just walk out the door.
Right.
After the child basically just said, my mother abused me.
Right, basically. And Heidi takes the moment to take a jab at her mother, saying, hey, it sucks when people don't believe you, doesn't it?
Right, she's admitting, like, hey, I just lied and made that up to make you look bad. Because you didn't believe me.
Right. The pastor arrives to pray at night and get rid of...
It's now July 25th.
To get rid of the evil. Meanwhile, something runs behind a skeptical Joyce, and suddenly all around them she sees flashes and images of slaves running around, and she starts freaking out. Nobody else notices that Joyce is freaking the heck out.
Yeah.
Like, Lisa happens to see it, but nobody else is like, hey, are you okay?
Yeah, she sees a family on the swing, which is the meeting place. So we learned that the way that the Underground Railroad worked is the lantern and the quilt show you the meeting place. The people wait there. Then the station master brings them from the meeting place to the hiding place and keeps them safe until they can move on to the next stop on the railroad. So the tree with the swing is the meeting place. She sees a slave family meeting there. I'm assuming these are the credits for slave mother, Idella Johnson, and slave boy, played by Tyler Humphrey. That's who's playing on the swing right now. And, and then we see the station master coming and getting them and taking them away to the hiding place.
And meanwhile, basically Joyce is freaking out. She falls over. Nobody says anything about this.
She pretty much has a breakdown.
Right.
Which is funny because I thought she was cool with her visions.
Right. Nobody's asking if she's okay or anything. The priest says it's over and, everything is cool now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, at night, Heidi sleeps. The door creeps open. She thinks it's her mother, but it's not.
The radio comes on. The lights come on. We see very clearly it's not over. The movie's not over yet, so obviously it's not over.
Yeah.
The piano starts playing.
Yep. And she sees a black ghost who plays a note on the piano.
And this is Nell.
Yep.
So she sees this woman playing on the piano, and she leaves a doll for Heidi, who then picks up the doll and then chases this woman into the woods. Yeah,
this is not very good survival instincts for this kid. None of them really do. But meanwhile, Lisa lays down next to a corpse in the nightmare.
She's dreaming. She dreams about the slaves and Mama Kay. And this is where we start seeing all these random clips of things we've already seen, as well as weird flashes of history and ghosts and everything just kind of mush-mosh together.
She wakes up to find out from Andy that Heidi is gone. They frantically go looking for her after calling the cops. Andy runs into the woods and finds her in the fireplace looking, so it looks like a fireplace.
Yeah, so we go to, it's at the station, the burned out old thing, and it's what used to be a fireplace, and he finds a trapdoor under it. Yep. And she's down in a hole. It's 25 feet deep into a pit, and she's at the bottom of it, and she's screaming for help, and she says, don't leave me alone with them. So even though the cops are here, the cops are outside, talking to the mom and the aunt. They haven't managed to stumble over here yet where the kid's screaming, which is interesting. Yeah. So he finds a rope ladder that's in a nearby chest, and he uses it to climb down into the hole. But there's something evil lurking around Heidi. We're getting all these sounds and creepy imagery. And then she sees the ghost of the burlap station master. So the ghost of the master always has the burlap sack on, and he's actually played by a different... Well, okay, I didn't even cover the actual station master, who we've seen in flashbacks several times. So credited as Station Master 1858. This is the man, right, when he was still alive. He was played by Wayne Pierre. He's in 6 episodes of a show called Your Honor. He was in 2 episodes of American Horror Story and 3 episodes of Ghost Whisperer.
Okay.
But whenever we're seeing the ghost version of him, the one with the burlap sack on, who's credited as Burlap Station Master 1993, so this is the ghost form, he's played by Sam Polin, who actually, he's a makeup artist.
Oh, okay.
So he did makeup work on movies such as Saw X, which is the most recent Saw movie, Insidious 3, Conjuring 2, so there we go back, some link to the Warrens, and he actually was a makeup artist on Haunting in Connecticut.
So the same way that the director of this movie was also the editor of the original movie, this guy also worked in the original movie.
So there was some staff connections.
Crossover.
But he only has 3 total acting credits, including this and an episode of Stargate Atlantis. I'm guessing they just needed somebody on set who could pull off doing this creepy, I got a bag over my head thing. And I'm guessing the real guy couldn't pull it off, is why they had someone else acting it.
So they end up finding a bunch of dead bodies down there. And Heidi, basically Heidi says she doesn't want to be there anymore. Then they cut away. The news is reporting on the situation. When the station manager was killed, the 5 slaves down there died, basically starving to death.
So that's the story as
we know it now.
As we know it now, is this is the room where he hid the slaves. This is the safe room. But when he was taken and killed, nobody knew they were down there, or cared that they were down there, and they couldn't get out, and they just died down there. And this was the 5 corpses they just found. And the reporters, so we hear a series of reporters explaining all of this stuff and telling us the stories. The reporters are played by Michael Dangerfield, who does tons of cartoon voice work. Barbara Tyson, who's in an episode of Devil in Ohio. That was an interesting Netflix series. She was also in an episode of Fringe and an episode of The 4400.
Okay.
And then we have Fiona Hogan, who was in an episode of Travelers and an episode of The Return. These are all great, genre shows. And then the 4th one, again, was Tom Elkins, the director, and, the editor who took a stab at directing in this one. So those are the reporters that we heard.
This movie came out in 2013, and he hasn't directed anything since. So I'm guessing he is not gonna go on to
pursue that any longer.
Yeah. So Heidi comes out of her room and says she doesn't want to live here anymore. Joy says it's okay now. The spirits have moved on.
Right. They all think it's done. You found their bodies. They wanted you to find them. We found them. We did such a great thing. They're happy now.
Lisa still wants to deny everything, but Joy says that they are free. Mr. Gordy, however, begs to differ.
Yeah, Mr. Gordy told Heidi that she's not safe here. The bad man saw her. He knows they're here now. And she's like, we gotta go. We can't live here anymore.
At this point, Heidi's like, so Lisa ends up saying that the station manager was a good man.
Yeah, she says, what bad man? She says, the station manager. And her mom's like, yeah, the station manager was a good guy. You know that. He was helping people. He was the victim here. And we get this, really creepy image of Heidi going, no, he was not a good man.
Right.
Which we'll flash back to that a few more times throughout the movie.
Yes. Lisa continues to insist that there's nothing to be afraid of. But Andy is on Heidi's side and also wants to leave.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily believe in all these ghosts and everything, but Mr. Gordy's been right every other time, so maybe we should listen to this kid.
Right.
And if she thinks we should leave, maybe we should just get up and leave. We just found corpses in our yard.
Right. Andy is on the porch, and we see a figure on the porch in the shadows. He really wants to leave, but Lisa doesn't want to. Lisa suggests he's sick, and he's like, no. I'm not buying that anymore. I'm not gonna let my daughter live this life.
I don't want her to live thinking that she has a mental illness.
Right.
What you have is a gift, and I don't want my daughter taking pills.
Right.
Nobody likes that Lisa's taking pills.
No. Meanwhile, we have a scene during the day. Joyce is talking to Heidi. She thinks the place is cured and no longer bad. Heidi tells her, no, this place isn't safe. And then we cut the night.
We actually cut to July 27th. So where were we last?
July 22nd?
25th. So we 2 days in the future we went. From the 25th to the 27th. And we're now loading the truck up.
At night, by the way. Like, why are we moving at night? Why are we not doing this during the day?
Yes.
Well, of course, it's so we can have all these scares and all that. But still, logically, this does not make sense. This is not when you would do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Pack the house at night. Pack the truck during the day.
Right,
and leave.
Yep.
Also, though, that conversation with Joyce, we learned that the family's leaving, but Joyce is staying. She's going to stay living in that RV because she doesn't think she needs to leave. So they're just going to keep owning this property and let her live there, and they're going to go live somewhere else?
Yeah, that also does not make sense.
That doesn't make sense. Like, is she buying the property from them?
Right,
like, what's going on? That she's just staying.
Right. So Heidi sees Mr. Gordy. The dog ends up running away.
Yeah, Chief runs off. Andy goes running after Chief to get him. And Heidi's like, no, we got to leave now, Dad. Right this second, we have to leave. And he's like, don't be silly. Let me go get the dog. Your mom's in the house. I'll be right back. Stay in the truck.
The radio comes on in the truck. Joyce's trailer door flies open. She has flashes of the slaves. She asks them why they are there.
Right. Joyce is really confused because she thought, again, that we found their bodies. They've moved on. Everybody's cool now. Why are you, like, she's not afraid of them. She's just like, why are you still here?
Right. She sees a spooky figure appearing in the distance.
The station master. Yeah. Specifically the burlap station master.
It appears to be going for Heidi. She screams for Heidi, which ends up attracting attention to herself. But then it looks at her and makes her way towards her. Joyce is menaced. Things fly around in her trailer. Joyce tries to call for help, but isn't getting anywhere. She starts vomiting up needles, and this was very pleasant.
She pulls a taxidermy needle out of her mouth. And for me, this was the creepiest, this was the only moment in the movie that made me kind of, shiver a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, it was, it's that body gore. You know, she's pulling this string, and the string just keeps going and going. And it's attached deep down in her throat, and she keeps pulling at it. And eventually we reveal that there's stitching going all the way up her torso. So as she's pulling this needle and string out of her mouth, her whole body's just getting sewn up. If that was me, I'd stop pulling. Cut it.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, go to the freaking hospital.
Right.
Don't keep pulling this thing out of your body that's making it worse.
Right.
The more you pull.
And then Heidi is abducted. Andy sends Lisa to Joyce, thinking that Heidi might have gone there. And Andy finds an abandoned shoe. And then he gets in his truck and starts driving wildly. I don't know what the heck he's doing.
Okay,
He's driving towards the forest.
This was weird.
Yeah, what is he hoping to accomplish other than running into a tree?
I was pretty positive he was going to run over his daughter. Your daughter's somewhere here, so let's just drive as fast as we can in the night through here.
I didn't understand anything about this, what he was trying to do.
He was frantic looking for her, but yeah, it was weird, and the result was he crashed his truck and is going to be incapacitated for the next few scenes. So it was getting him out of the way, so he can't help.
Okay, that was a pretty stupid way to do it, but all right.
Yeah. Lisa is having visions. She sees Arthur the conductor. He's played by Hunter Burke, who was in 19 episodes of Sweet Magnolias. He was in 2 episodes of Scream this series. So this is a conductor. He's a white man who is helping the station master move slaves back and forth between stations. And he just keeps pointing. And we'll see him throughout the rest of the film just kind of pointing at places. So he's pointing Lisa in the right direction, right?
Yeah. Lisa goes into Joyce's trailer. And Joyce has got needles coming from her body into the ceiling.
Yeah, she's now hanging from the ceiling, hooked to her mouth. And she's in the position of the girl on the cover art.
Yeah.
So this is the cover art for the movie. Now, that's not her. That's not Joyce.
No.
That's not Joyce's actress. She's not wearing what Joyce is wearing. I don't know why that's the cover image of this movie. But that's the position that Joyce is in. That's the only link to it, is she's, hanging arched by her mouth. It's really creepy.
Unpleasant.
Sight.
Yeah. Lisa gets some scissors and ends up cutting her down.
Also, there's maggots in her mouth, too.
Yeah. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, the maggots, like the sawdust and bugs thing. So, yeah, she grabs the scissors. She pauses. I don't know what's taking her so long to cut the strings, but she really, pauses like she doesn't want to do it. Meanwhile, the burlap man arrives, and finally she cuts the string. And as soon as she cuts one string, all the strings disappear. Joyce falls to the ground. The bugs are still there. And she ends up telling Lisa that Heidi is with him.
Yeah, and she sees some flashes. She goes to get her medication, but then Lisa begs her not to, and she doesn't end up taking it. And Lisa ends up following the ghosts and is led to where Heidi is being taken. Eventually brought to the same hole that she was in before.
And we have one of those lanterns again.
Yeah.
So it's a ghost lantern. She takes the lantern and goes down into... So they left, like, I guess the police left a ladder into this thing where the corpses were. It's kind of weird. They just left a ladder there. But she climbs this ladder down. And she's looking for Heidi. And she sees... we get clips of Andy talking about the traps, right?
Yep.
The dog trap.
Yeah.
And now she's making this connection that this room is very similar to those traps, where you can get inside, but you can't get out.
Mm.
And one of the things that Andy had said about the traps was, then there's a back door that lets the hunter get the animal out after it dies. So she begins looking around the room, and she sees Nell and Levi's name on the wall, like we know they were here. And then she finds a loose board. And she breaks it through the wall, and then there's a locked door on the other side, which she kicks through, and she has now found a secret entrance. She found the back door to this already secret room. And there's stairs leading down. It's, like, really creepy. Like, how deep does this dungeon go? Because we're already 25 feet underground. Now there's stairs going down.
And then there's some kind of, like, mysterious fire that I didn't quite understand what was going on there.
Okay, so there's taxidermy animals everywhere.
Yeah.
Including, like, weird crossbreeds. Like, he was, like, taking parts of different animals and pinning them together to make these crossbreed taxidermies. So you're already seeing here, like, oh, this guy was a little crazy, right? She drops the lantern. That's what set the fire. So she has this ghost lantern that doesn't even exist.
Right.
She drops it.
Yeah.
Looking at all of this stuff in the room, including she sees a skeleton.
She ends up backing into something, which ends up falling on her.
Yeah, and so now the room's on fire, which is funny because it wasn't a real lantern.
Right.
But the room's on fire, and then this is when we start seeing crazy flashes again of the past, as well as the ghosts and everything that happened. The station master doing taxidermy, and we start seeing the whole room's full of corpses, including Nell and Levi and the Arthur the conductor. All of their corpses are here. So he was killing people. Mm-hmm. The dude was killing dudes. So he could taxidermy on them. So was he both
being the station manager and letting people go free, and also killing people at the same time?
Right. So he didn't like kill everybody. He was well known as they said hundreds of people went through here. Mm. But every once in a while, including, Nell and Levi, he would just keep people. And nobody would be looking for them because, they're just dangerous slaves. And, they died somewhere. Nobody knows where they ended up. Right.
Lisa finds Heidi tied up. She gets her out, and then finds the place Andy fell in when he created the small hole.
Right. She sees light up at the ceiling. And, and it's funny because we should be 50 feet underground because we went down 25 feet and then she went down a staircase. So we should be like 50 feet underground. But she's only like 5 feet from the surface, which doesn't make any sense. But that's the spot next to the tree where his foot fell through. And she's like, oh, it's going to be super easy to climb out right there. Which, again, doesn't make any logical sense how that's possible.
So they start climbing. Heidi gets out, but
Heidi's pulled out.
Right.
And Lisa doesn't know, obviously that looks bad. Her daughter was just pulled, but Lisa's pulled back in.
Right. By a skeleton-looking figure.
It's the burlap station master. He's about to kill her. But Lisa's mother comes and reminds her to let them in. That's the key. Let them in. She shuts
her eyes, and Lisa sees the flashes. The station manager figure, we find out, is actually killed. Okay, so I was a little confused. Does this signify that the slaves eventually banded and killed the station manager?
Okay, so yeah, I was the first time watching the scene, I was confused, but I figured it out by the second time.
Okay.
So he killed people, right? All of the corpses in this room are people he already killed before he died.
Right.
Now the corpses in the first room didn't die until after he died because they were abandoned.
Mm.
But all of the people he already killed, including the white guy, Arthur the conductor, he killed him too. Apparently he thought no one was going to be looking for him. Their corpses are all in this chamber, the bottom chamber. So those ghosts who were already on the property when the hunting club killed him.
Okay, gotcha.
So the hunting club killed him and hung him, and then the ghosts of the people he killed kind of ravished him after he was hung.
Okay.
And devoured him.
Okay.
But still created, his ghost.
Some kind of evil entity?
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, we see him getting killed, and then the ghosts of the people he's already killed attacking him.
Gotcha. I was really confused on that point. So, what ends up happening to the station manager? Do they attack him again and then vaporize him or something? Or
I don't know what was the past, what was now.
Gotcha. You were confused by all that too.
We know the truth now.
Right.
And now the corpses of everybody's been found, so I guess they're free.
Okay.
I guess, maybe. And when Lisa's climbing out now after... Did she... Okay, wait. What did she do? Did she kill him?
I don't know. But
So
she ends up getting pulled up by Gordy.
Yeah, so
and then
she
we
says
see the
who pulled
station
us
manager,
up, and it was Mr. Gordy that pulled him up.
We see him, getting surrounded and vaporized, I guess. I'm not totally clear on that. I'm not sure if, what we were seeing was what happened to him in the past, or
I think
that's
it
what's
was
happening
both.
now. Okay.
I don't know.
So, Lisa's pulled the rest of the way out by Mr. Gordy, and Lisa finally sees him.
Because obviously, we
Yeah.
know now Mr. Gordy's the good guy.
Right. They are joined by Andy, who
is recovered from his car accident,
Yeah.
comes just in time to hug them once they're safe.
maybe he should be going to the hospital because he probably has some broken bones, something. The next morning, they've decided...
It's actually 2 weeks later.
Oh, okay.
Which is funny because the whole movie we've been getting specific dates. And then all of a sudden this time it just says 2 weeks later. Why are you not giving us a specific date? Because that's
Right.
the format you've been using all movie.
Yeah, so they decided that they are going to stay.
Andy's put up a tire swing.
And the dog is still
on the
alive.
tree.
That's crucial.
Yes, Joyce is alive and well because we were kind of left what's happening with her? She's good.
Yeah.
She recovered. The dog's here. He's fine. Everybody's fine. Joyce and Lisa discuss Mr. Gordy, and they think that he knew what his grandfather did, and that's why he didn't allow visitors on the property, because he was just trying to protect his family name. Not that he was a bad guy, he just didn't want all this to come into light.
How about Mr. Gordy now? What is his motivation now?
He seems like a good guy.
Yeah, I guess.
And in this scene, he helps Heidi learn how to ride her bike.
Nobody else bothers to do
Yeah,
that.
he helps her learn to ride
Yeah.
her bike, and she rides off and waves goodbye to him, and he walks away.
And then we see other slave ghosts fading away, and a title card says that Heidi never saw Mr. Gordy again.
So specifically the title card says, the Wyrick family remained in the Gordy house for another 5 years. Lisa's visions ended and have not returned, and Heidi never saw Mr. Gordy again.
Mm.
And then we get a image of the real life Heidi Wyrick as a child.
Yep.
Like a Sears portrait studio shot of her.
Yep.
And we get to see the real obituary photo of Mr. Gordy. The real Mr. Gordy. And then we get this real life photo of the family. Lisa, Andy, Joyce, Heidi, her younger sister Jordan, who was never mentioned in this movie. And they're all grown up. So this is a picture of them when they're adults, around the time the movie was being made, I'm assuming.
Right.
And it's really weird. Now, I love that we use real photos. I love when we do that.
Yes.
But it was weird because we never actually learned anything about their real story.
Right.
Giving us some title cards telling us what was supposed to be real would have been interesting. We never even mentioned Jordan in this movie, but here's her sister Jordan.
Right. That doesn't mean anything to us because she's not mentioned in the actual movie.
Right. Exactly. I think it would have made sense, if they did want to, include her in some way. Lisa should have been pregnant during this film.
Yeah.
Or revealed at the end that she's pregnant. Because remember, the only real life thought of anything malignant? Is that the word?
Benevolent?
There we go, that word. Was when, right when she had Jordan is when the family thought they were all getting scratched by some evil entity.
Right.
So maybe she should have been pregnant during this.
Perhaps.
Or some mention of the fact that there's another child.
I'm kind of curious, and I didn't really look into this, how exactly the family feels about this movie. Because it bears no relationship to their actual story.
Exactly. I know that, and I was trying to look up the book. I didn't get too far with the book. But since Joyce wrote the book, I'm assuming the book is more about their real life than this.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I don't know this again, I feel like the whole veil thing came from the book.
Yeah.
Because that's what the book's called, The Veil. And that detail was picked up on. But yeah, how did their story get linked to, let's make a movie about a ghost from the Underground Railroad that taxidermied people?
Right, yeah. It's quite
It feels
elite.
like that was somebody's fictional concept. And they're like, oh, we can mash these two things together and make a movie.
I mean, that's probably how it came about. But...
Right. But yeah, I don't know. I know that everybody involved in the movie was upset at it being called Haunting in Connecticut too.
Yeah.
But I don't know how any of them felt about, like, hey, let's take your story, which we have a book about, we got a documentary about, we're in Unsolved Mysteries. It's like a notable story. Like, you can just type Wyrick House and you're going to find their story on the internet.
Yeah, I'm curious about that documentary. Like, whether it's available.
Taking that and turning it into this, yeah, it's weird. It's got to be weird for the family. It's got to be weird for Heidi to be like, oh, yeah, there's a movie about me, but...
it has nothing to do with anything that I actually experienced.
It just has all of my family members' names in it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty weird.
It's pretty weird.
So, yeah, not a super great movie. I mean, I've certainly seen worse movies, for sure.
No, it's definitely not
It's watchable.
the worst. I think it was much more watchable, like I said, on the second watch through. And I'm not positive if it has to do with
knowing some of the history,
or having seen the movie and then it makes more sense the second time. But yeah, definitely, I think if you watched it once and you weren't sure but you want to like it, watch it again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or go watch some other stuff about this family that might be a little bit more fact-based.
Maybe check out the actual documentary if you actually want to know the true story.
Yeah, and who knows how accurate the documentary is either. There is that Unsolved Mysteries clip if you just want a 10-minute version. Again, that was season 7, episode 4 of Unsolved Mysteries. You can check that out.
I kind of miss Unsolved Mysteries.
It came back,
It did?
a couple years ago, but
it probably didn't have Robert Stack.
Right, exactly.
Because he passed away, unfortunately.
It came back in a different format. But I don't know if they're still making new episodes, but there was at least a couple seasons of the new version. I watched a little bit of it.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, Unsolved Mysteries is always kind of hit or miss for me,
Right.
It's this weird, conjunction of, oh, here's a murder that was never solved, and here's a little girl that sees ghosts.
Right.
It's kind of a mixed bag of stories.
All right, so do we have anything else to say before concluding?
We want to know what you guys think of this movie. If anybody has seen this, give us your thoughts.
Yes, we usually include shout-outs for people who comment, but we're recording this well in advance, so we're not going to be able to do that going forward. But as Stacie mentioned when we did Halloween Party, we will...
if we get comments
on
all of our horror podcasts.
If we get some interesting comments, we'll do a separate video.
We'll do something to be able to kind of review all of these movies that we covered and what people had to say about them.
All right, so...
And definitely check out all of our other content because we have tons and tons and tons of great things on this channel, in addition to horror and Halloween movies all month long.
Yep. All right, so we'd like to hear from you. What did you think of this podcast? What did you think of this movie? Stacie, we reached at...
I can reach on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
All right, if you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can you can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions or on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell so you're notified when new content drops, because there will be other Halloween content coming. And this is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.